from the BBC World Service in association with ABC and All India Radio. This is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in quarantine. I've made it to Australia for the upcoming India Test series, so 14 days in isolation for me. I'm staying in a government, well, they call them Medi hotels here in Australia, and I'm feeling rather fortunate with where I am at the moment. I do have a window which opens as well. You get food dropped off outside your door twice a day, which is the most exciting thing when you get that little knock and something happens. Nobody comes into your room, no cleaners even come in, so you'll be very well self-sufficient. I'm right by Sydney Airport, which means, well, ordinarily I'm just down the road from where my usual co-host lives, but this week...
Clint Wheeldon joining you from Perth, from representing Jim Maxwell, who's got the week off, and it's fantastic to be invited back onto Stumped again. No quarantine here in Perth for me. Unfortunately, no international cricket this summer as well, but I am looking forward to seeing what will take place right across the nation, and good to be back on Stumped.
Good to see you and good to hear you, Clint. And no quarantine for me here in Bangalore. This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio. Local cricket, by the way, has restarted with gusto because the matches that were supposed to have been finished last March are now finishing, which is, of course, the end of the league, and lots of cricket action, lots of other sports as well, shedding their apprehension and just getting on with it, which is what all of us probably need to do. But, of course, the COVID menace still lurks around. All right, all eyes very soon on India's tour to Australia. We'll see what that throws up.
Well, exactly, and seeing what it throws up is probably a very pertinent thing to say. Good to have you with us, Clint, by the way. But I had quite a drama getting to Australia because I was meant to fly into Adelaide, venue for the first Test match, but I got an email 5 hours before I was leaving for the airport to say the second leg of my journey, so Singapore to Adelaide, was cancelled. No more information than that, nothing about we're rerouting you or anything like that, just cancelled. So I didn't know whether to go to the airport or not, or whether I would get another flight to Adelaide or what. And it took a few phone calls before I was told that Adelaide had closed its borders to international arrivals for, at the time, they told me 4 days. But I reckon my flight was one of the first to be affected by Adelaide's little cluster of COVID, which has now led to a full-on 6-day lockdown for South Australia. Questions about the Adelaide Test match, but got to hope that South Australians can do it strong and get through. It's a very short, sharp lockdown to try and quash this COVID outbreak. So hope everyone in South Australia is going all right. But yes, as for Adelaide, well, the first Test match is due to start on December 17th. And Clint, this really has given Cricket Australia a headache they didn't really need at this stage.
It is a massive problem for Cricket Australia. They will do everything that they possibly can to make sure that Adelaide does host the Test match. But we do know the MCG, while they're not putting their hand up as such, have made Cricket Australia aware, and CA would be aware that they could move it there. We heard Josh Hazlewood being interviewed earlier this week talking about that if it doesn't take place in Adelaide, he would like to see it potentially move to Brisbane, with the Australians having such a great record up there. There's a question mark if they do move it. We know that it was going to be a day-night test, the first day-night test that India will have played outside of India. Would they maintain that if they did move the Test match away from Adelaide? All these things we hope don't come to pass. The good news today, Ali, that no further cases in South Australia. So that is some positive news. And the hard lockdown means that everyone around the country is keeping their fingers crossed that SA doesn't go through anything like what Victoria had to go through over winter, which basically shut the state and moved all the football teams out of Victoria. So hopefully, despite all the drama that has taken place, and here in WA, the number of teams that had just come out of the Sheffield Shield bubble that had taken place in SAWA, for example, had arrived back the day before on the Saturday. The players met their families, went home, and then with what happened with the cluster breaking out, everyone got a text message from the WA government saying, look, I know you've been home for a day. You now have to go into quarantine wherever you happen to be. And that saw the Adelaide Strikers, lock, stock and barrel, have to move to New South Wales. It saw the likes of Cameron Green, for example, who's been named in the test squad, and one-day squad, a number of the other WA players like Ashton Agar then forced to race to Sydney as well under quarantine issues. So it has caused no end of headaches for Cricket Australia, and we just keep our fingers crossed that it stops really quickly. Good luck to everyone in SA.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
OK, next on Stumped to the star interviewee that we promised you last week. New Zealand's left-arm seamer Trent Boult has become something of a specialist for the biggest moments in the biggest games. In last year's World Cup final at Lords, he bowled the final over of the match and the super over as New Zealand suffered their most agonising of defeats to England. And then just over a week ago, with the eyeballs of hundreds of millions of cricket fans fixed on their screens, he was entrusted to bowl the opening over of the IPL final for the Mumbai Indians. And Boult didn't disappoint. He had Delhi Capitals opener Marcus Stoinis caught behind off the very first ball of the match to set Mumbai on the road to their 5th title in 8 years. He finished with figures of 3 for 30, claiming the Player of the Match award in the final. And when he joined me from his quarantine hotel in Christchurch, I asked him if the IPL win had time to sink in.
Not really, to be honest. I think, I suppose, in a way, making such a big sacrifice to leave my young family, all these kind of things, travel halfway across the world, and then, be a part of first of all, such a big tournament, but such a long tournament as well. To get there to the end, be a part of the playoffs, and then obviously to lift the trophy at the end of it was, it made it all worth it. But once that finished, we literally got straight on a chartered flight back home with the West Indies players. I'm back here in Christchurch now, preparing for a series against them. We've got about halfway through our quarantine so far, but it's just non-stop. But obviously, I had a great time. I really enjoyed it, and made some good memories.
Here's the first ball of the super over to decide the World Cup final. That is Trent Boult for New Zealand, running into Ben Stokes of England, who's heaved that away.
You're an excellent bowler in the pressure moments. And of course, opening the bowling, the very first over, you made a massive impact in the final. Of course, you also bowled the super over in the World Cup final. So you've been in those situations before of immense pressure. What makes you a good bowler for the captain to turn to be able to perform in those kind of situations, do you think?
I don't know. I think every kind of, from being a young age, obviously I've wanted to test myself as much as I could, and get the opportunity to play against the best players in the world and test myself out against the Steve Smith, the Kohli, the Joe Roots, the Stokesies, all these kind of guys is where you want to be. So I've kind of, always like to take on that situation. Of course, in my role as a bowler, you can have your off days, you can have your days where everything goes well, but I kind of don't mind failing in a way. I've always found that it's the best chance to learn, and you definitely learn a lot more when things don't go your way. But in terms of the World Cup, I was pretty clear on what my role was, and that was to get the new ball in my hand and try to start the innings up nicely for our side. And the way I wanted to do that was obviously pitch the ball up and get it swinging around. And once again, some days we're better than others, but it was a good feeling to, I suppose, get the ball on the spot first up in that final and get one past my mate Marcus. But it's just the way it goes. Some days it works, some days it doesn't. But it's a great feeling when it's all happening.
Tell me a little bit about the mental anxiety, coming back to that word pressure again, but the mental exertion, I suppose, and concentration that is needed to bowl a 4-over spell, when arguably there's greater importance placed on every delivery because you've only got 24 balls to perform.
Yeah, there's kind of two ways you can look at it. 24 balls can be a lot of balls in a way. It's almost 24 single matches in an experience or whatever. But the batsman's got one chance really to make his mark. It can be still a long time with the ball, but the way I kind of approached that campaign was just solely going out there to enjoy myself, embrace the opportunity, and we had 5 Kiwis actually involved in the IPL, so to be one of those 5 and to get the chance to play every game as well, I just wanted to grab it with both hands. So from a mental point of view, it's the most taxing thing would have to be, the weekend games you play on Friday, then you'd travel a couple of hours back to our hotel and then drive all the way back and play again on the Sunday. It's actually, although it's only 4 overs, you knock up 16 games across 6 weeks. It can be demanding, but no, I loved it.
Well, it all came together brilliantly during the IPL and particularly in the final. So massive congratulations for that and good luck for the upcoming series as well. Great to have you on Stumped, Trent. Thanks so much.
No worries. Thank you very much.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, let's finish this week with a new rule designed to spice up the appeal of the Men's Big Bash, which is Australia's domestic T20 competition. Now, it's one of a number of initiatives which have drawn a fair bit of conversation on social media. I mean, does the Big Bash even need tinkering with? Well, Clint will tell us that in a moment, I'm sure. But this particular rule I want to talk about means that at the 10-over mark, so the halfway point in the first innings of every match, both teams will be allowed to substitute a player for a so-called X-factor player who comes off the bench. Now, the substitute can only replace a player who hasn't batted or hasn't bowled more than 1 over. Now, Clint, Charu, my first reaction is that if a player has the X-factor, then why isn't that player in the team in the first place rather than being on the subs bench? But what do you make of this one, Clint? Go for it.
I think these rule changes are ridiculous, Ali. And if that makes me a grumpy old man shouting at a cloud, that's fine, because the Big Bash didn't need gimmicky innovations. It was innovative enough. The reasons why there has been, and there understandably has been, a drop in the TV audiences particularly, have got nothing to do with the game not being radical enough and not being entertaining enough. There's far bigger pictures than that. I saw these 3 rules, and I'm really keen to hear from our next guest what he makes of them, and just thought, goodness me, no. And I'm not someone who is the old, T20's no good. I love T20 cricket, but these rules are just dumb.
Strong stuff from Clint, Charu.
My turn, Clint. Do forgive me for this, all right? Now, cricket is a big game for all of us, but guess what? It's not the biggest. Let's take football or hockey or basketball. All of them have a very, very robust substitution system. So it's, for me, wrong to presume that the playing 11 is that much better than number 12, 13, 14, 15. It's just circumstantial, maybe horses for courses, somebody who's not included or the other. Let's not put the first 11 on a pedestal as is the want of cricket.
Yes, let's do that. Let's do that.
Because there are a whole lot of people who are just as good. I can tell you in India, for instance, and I'm sure in Australia too, there are at least 50 people who can play for the Indian cricket team at any given point of time. It's just the fact that they're not getting a chance. And even in all these major sports, you have these super substitutes come in and work wonders, miracles, score goals called super subs, X factor, whatever. So why should cricket be this holy, whatchamacallit, where, the old system must work?
Well, this isn't the first time cricket has experimented with substitutes, because do you remember the super sub? It was brought into one-day international cricket in 2005. Have a listen to this.
And we have a message coming out. This could well be super sub status time, and that Kasparovich, who's not a super sub, is merely an extra man, has delivered something to Ponting. He's wandering over to Rudy Kurtzen, and we may now have the promotion of Brad Hogg from mere sub to super sub. There's certainly a conversation going on. We'll watch Rudy to see if he gives his T sign. We'll see if something happens to Brad Hogg magical out there, whether he suddenly, a light flashes on his cap or something.
What a moment. That was BBC cricket correspondent Jonathan Agnew describing Brad Hogg becoming Australia's first ever super sub in an ODI against England at Headingley in 2005. Brad joins us now. Hoggy, welcome to Stumped.
Thanks very much, Alison. Yes, I don't quite remember that, but now just hearing that, it does refresh the memory. And I remember getting out there and speaking to Ricky Ponting, and I said, mate, told you beforehand you should have picked me straight away. Bat a little bit better than Foster and spin it both ways.
Well said. So, go on then, in terms of these BBL rules, super sub or X Factor player, which do you prefer?
Super Sub X Factor, look, I think it's just ludicrous at the present moment what they're trying to do. Why tamper with a game that was just excelling? It was an excitement machine over here in Australia. And the one aspect that they are missing right now with the Big Bash, what made fans come to the game? Yes, it was exciting, entertaining cricket, but when we were here at the Furnace in Perth, the crowd were close to the action. The players were mingling with the crowd. They were giving the kids high fives while they were actually playing, and everyone was getting into the entertainment factor. And after the games, we just stayed around, made sure we signed autographs till that last person went out of the ground. And that was the thing that made the difference. We don't need to be tampering with stuff like this now. You've the X Factor, after 10 overs, you can only bowl 1 over, and then you can bring a new bowler on. That bowler can bowl 4 overs from the way that I read it. So you can pick a player, a specialist opening bowler to bowl in that 4-over power play at the start, just to bowl 1 over. He gets a couple of breakthroughs. Then you bring in a specialist death bowler who can bowl 4 overs in the final 10 overs. For me, it's just ludicrous. They haven't thought about it.
I mean, the Super Sub experiment only lasted 1 year. Can you recall sort of why you thought that didn't work at the time?
Because it was ridiculous, it was stupid, and it was just tinkering with the game way too much. Actually, going back to the other thing too, to the other point, is you can change in after the 10-over mark of the first innings. So if you're fielding, you have an injury, you can replace that batsman. Whereas if a batsman gets injured while batting in that first innings, you can't replace him. So if it happens in the 11th to 20th over. So for me, it's just ludicrous. They haven't thought about it.
Brad, look, thank you so much for joining us on Stumped and being so forthright in your views as well about these new rules and regulations. Great to hear from you as always.
And Alison, you keep Charu and Clint Wheeldon in line, please. Especially Clint.
You think I can do that?
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us, Brad. Take care. That is Brad Hogg, Australia's first ever Super Sub, and of course a Big Bash champion as well. Well, that's it for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Don't forget to download our podcast for extra content and stay in touch with us on Twitter using the hashtag BBC Stumped. Thanks to my co-hosts, Charu Sharma and Clint Wheeldon, and to you for listening. Join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.